My name is Lucas, and I'm a 38-year-old from the suburbs of Chicago. I'm going to tell you about the most awkward, painful, and ultimately freeing night of my life. I never imagined I would find myself standing at the edge of a ballroom. That wasn't mine, watching the woman I once promised forever to, smiling in another man's arms. The chandeliers above sparkled like 1,000 stars. But for me, the light felt harsh, exposing every flaw, every failure, every wound I thought I had buried. Lisa looked radiant in her white gown, her laughter mingling with the music, as if she had never carried the weight of our past. I told myself I wasn't there to cause trouble, only to show support for appearances, for closure, maybe even for the small, fragile part of me that still clung to the idea of mutual respect. But closure is never that simple. The room was filled with familiar faces, friends we once shared, couples we used to double date with, people who knew our story only from fragments, never the whole truth. I caught their stares, their whispers barely concealed behind champagne glasses. One friend, Daniel, leaned closer to another guest, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I guess some men never move on. Imagine showing up to your ex's wedding like a lost puppy. Laughter rippled around the table, sharp and cutting, louder in my ears than the band's melody. My chest tightened and heat rose from embarrassment, but I forced myself to breathe. My first instinct was to turn and walk out. I didn't know anyone hear my presence, yet something rooted me to the floor, a mix of pride and defiance. I wasn't going to let them portray me as the pathetic character in this story. Still, the mockery didn't stop. A woman chimed in, someone Lisa and I had once considered a close friend. Maybe he came hoping she'd change her mind. Poor thing. Doesn't he realize she's moved on to someone better? Their laughter stung worse than their words. Each chuckle was like salt in wounds I thought had healed. I shifted in my seat, clenching my jaw, pretending to scroll through my phone as if none of it reached me. But deep inside, I felt that familiar ache, the sense of being judged, of being less than, of losing something not just precious but defining. Then, as if fate wanted to test me further, Lisa's new husband raised his glass for a toast. "To love that conquers all," he announced proudly. The crowd cheered, raising their glasses high. Yet from the corner of my eye, I saw Daniel smirk again. Leaning forward, his eyes locked on me, he whispered just loud enough for me to hear. "Not for everyone, though. Some men just aren't built for love." The laughter that followed was merciless. For a moment, I wondered if Lisa had heard. I doubted she did, caught up in the whirlwind of her day. But I was wrong, because just as the room's laughter began to echo again, she set her glass down, her smile fading into something sharp and deliberate. Lisa's sudden silence cut through the noise like glass shattering. She turned her head, her eyes sweeping across the tables until they landed directly on me. For a moment I froze, caught in that familiar gaze that once held love, anger, forgiveness, and everything in between. The room fell quieter as people noticed her change in demeanor. Even Daniel, who had been smirking with pride, shifted uneasily in his seat. "Funny," she began, her voice steady yet carrying an edge that demanded attention. "How some people feel entitled to mock others, even when they don't know the full story." The laughter died instantly. Forks clinked nervously against plates, and the air thickened with tension. My stomach churned because I wasn't sure what she was about to say. Part of me feared humiliation. Another part hoped for some kind of acknowledgement. Lisa stepped away from her new husband, walking gracefully toward the microphone left by the bandstand. She didn't glance at me again, but I could feel the weight of her words aimed at the people who had mocked me moments earlier. "You see," she continued, her tone unwavering, "it's easy to laugh when you've never carried someone else's sacrifices on your shoulders. It's easy to judge when you've never seen the nights they went without, so you could have more. The mornings they worked double shifts while hiding their own pain." Her eyes flicked toward Daniel, and I saw his smirk falter. "What most of you forget is that the man you mock was the reason I even became the woman I am today." The silence was so thick it almost hurt to breathe. My heart pounded. Each word she spoke pulled me back into memories I had tried to bury. Long hours at work, skipped meals, the times I chose her dreams over mine. Yes, those sacrifices had been real, and now here she was reminding everyone of them. Her new husband shifted awkwardly but said nothing. This was her stage, and she wasn't about to let it slip. "We didn't end because he was weak," she said firmly, her voice echoing in the vast hall. We ended because love sometimes changes. But never, she paused, her eyes scanning the room with sharp precision. Never mistake change for failure. A ripple moved through the crowd. Those who had laughed moments before now avoided my eyes, their earlier amusement collapsing into shame. Daniel looked down at his glass, his arrogance drained. His face flushed red. I sat frozen, my throat dry, unsure if I wanted to thank her or walk out. The woman I once loved had just defended me in front of everyone, shutting down the mockery in a way I never could. And yet a part of me ached because her words, though powerful, also highlighted an undeniable truth. She had moved on, but she still carried fragments of me. Fragments I wasn't sure I wanted back. The applause that followed was hesitant at first. Just a few claps scattered across the room, but soon it grew louder, rising like an unexpected storm. People weren't just applauding Lisa. They were applauding the weight of truth in her words. I sat there stunned, my palms pressed against the table, trying to ground myself as the sound washed over me. Lisa returned to her husband's side, slipping her hand into his, but the atmosphere had shifted entirely. The same friends who had mocked me minutes ago now looked uncomfortable in their seats, some fiddling with their napkins, others pretending to be fascinated by the floral arrangements. The taste of humiliation I had carried all evening suddenly dulled, replaced by something else, vindication, maybe even closure. Daniel leaned toward Lisa, whispering something I couldn't hear. She gave a polite smile, but her body language said everything. Her speech hadn't been rehearsed. It hadn't been for show. It had been raw, genuine, and maybe even a little rebellious. For the first time that evening, I realized something. She hadn't forgotten what we had been through, no matter how far she had moved on. I excused myself from the table, needing air. Outside, the night was cool, the sky littered with stars that seemed indifferent to the chaos inside. I leaned against a stone pillar, inhaling deeply when footsteps approached. It was Lisa. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, her voice stripped of the formality she had carried in front of the guests. I nodded, though the lump in my throat made it hard to speak. "Why did you do that?" She hesitated, her eyes reflecting both warmth and regret. "Because you didn't deserve what they said. Whatever happened between us, it doesn't erase what you did for me. For us, you were part of my story. And I won't let anyone rewrite that with cheap jokes." Her honesty hit harder than I expected. For years I had blamed myself, questioned my worth, and tonight I had walked into this reception bracing for more of the same. But her words had given me something I hadn't realized. I was still searching for dignity. I managed a small smile. "Thank you, Lisa, that means more than you know." She touched my arm lightly, then pulled back as if remembering the new boundaries of her life. "I'm glad you came," she said before turning back toward the glowing reception hall. I stayed outside for a while longer, watching her disappear into the crowd. I knew then that I was finally free. The bitterness, the regret, the sense of being less, it all loosened its grip. I wasn't the punchline they had tried to make me. I was the man who had loved, who had sacrificed, and who had been acknowledged in front of everyone, even by the woman who no longer shared my name. When I left that night, it wasn't in shame. It was with my head held high, carrying the quiet victory of a man who had been mocked but was ultimately vindicated, not by revenge, not by anger, but by the truth spoken at a wedding.